Silence. The only thing the unnamed pony's ears could make out. Dull, unending silence. His eyes couldn't see anything beyond the pure blackness of the void, with only a few glimmers of gray light shifting in and out of view. Soon, though, even they faded to black. Despite that, he knew of his location. The edge of creation. The large pocket of existence that stands between the walls of the universe and the space between dimensions. 8? A voice echoed through the unnamed pony's head, catching his attention. Please, open your eyes. Gently, he complied, finding only a glowing white shard floating weightlessly before him, seemingly watching him. He turned his head, looking all around himself, seeing one shard after another. He was surrounded by them. Who are... Before he could speak up, the same voice echoed through his head again, making him wince. You don't seem to have a home in this dimension. What? He tried again, only to be cut off once more. Shh. We'll find you a home, 8. With that, a slow bubble of light began to envelop him, sprouting from just behind the first shard. As the bubble grew and surrounded his entire body, a bright sky began to form from the light. Clouds flew past his vision as he floated down towards a darkly lit town, light reflecting off each individual window. It looked completely abandoned. 8? He whispered to himself, turning his attention back to the shard. It didn't respond. Within moments of the surrounding light fading, gravity suddenly took hold, dropping him towards the concrete streets. His screams echoed through the air as his body flailed in the wind, the world completely blurring around him. Yet somehow, the shard was following him down. You're safe with me, the voice echoed one last time, seeming to fade away. He could feel himself begin to slow and stabilize in the air, until he was once again upright. Gradually, he approached the ground, extending his hoof and feeling the concrete below make contact with it, before gravity finally took complete hold, setting him gently upon the abandoned streets. What is this place? He looked around slowly, taking note of the street name, Dulcan Street. Just then, a sudden cold wind blew hard from behind as random papers and leaves shot past him. He stumbled forward, barely managing to catch himself before he quickly moved close to one of the buildings, trying to avoid it. Each building seemed totally unlabeled, with each one having their doors all tightly boarded shut. He quickly attempted to yank one of the boards off, which was blocking off the entrance to what looked to be a shop, as it did have a display window showing its interior. However, a small glimmer of light flickered from the center of the street, through the reflection, catching his attention. He quickly turned and stared, seeing something shiny rolling around in the wind. Cautiously, he approached and scooped it up in his hoof, seeing now that it was that white shard again, the same one that had followed him down. Without warning, another burst of wind shot past him, threatening to knock him over. He quickly ran back towards the building, taking shelter, making sure to hold the shard tightly against his chest. As the wind blew harder and harder, he once again tried to force himself into the building, yanking and pulling at the boards, to no avail. After a long moment of catching his breath, a look of determination crossed his face, before he took a step back, taking a deep breath before making a quick dash to the door, pivoting just before it and twisting into a powerful buck. The wood broke with a loud snap, splintering, but it gave him a small opening into the building. Reaching his hoof in, he quickly turned the knob and pushed the door completely open, crawling inside and slamming the door closed behind himself. Slowly, he took a deep breath before suddenly choking, coughing on the dust that the building had become bathed in. Well, that was unpleasant, he found himself whispering, just as his cough had nearly subsided. But I'm finally inside. He quickly pressed his arm against his mouth and nose, breathing slowly, as he cautiously turned, looking around the room. Barren bookshelves lined the left wall. A few had even collapsed completely, leaving behind splintered, rotting wood. A desk sat just to the right of them, an old register sitting atop it, the drawer open and completely empty of any currency. Letting out another sigh, he lifted the shard away from his chest, looking down at it before trotting up to the desk and setting it down. I can't carry this thing around like this. He stared at it for a long moment, before slowly moving to the other end of the room, peering down a dim hallway barely being lit by the sunlight. Moving slowly, he stepped into it, noticing a set of stairs at the other end, leading up to a second floor. Two doors lined the left side of the wall, one laying open, revealing a pitch-black room, while the other remained shut. Looking to his right, he spotted a light switch and quickly flipped it. Nothing happened. Great. No power. He let out a sigh, looking back down the dark hallway. Slowly, he began making his way towards the first shut door, pushing it open, revealing a small, empty closet, filled with dangling spiderwebs coming from the ceiling and walls. Though he wasn't actually able to spot any spiders. With a look of disgust, he closed the door, not seeing anything of note, before making his way over to the next one, which still sat open. Looking in, he could barely make out what seemed to be a fairly big room, topped off with an old, dusty bed. Past that, many of the details were lost in the dark. Even if he wanted to go in, though, a small desk blocked the doorway. Turning back to the stairs, he peered up them, barely seeing into another dim, but wider-looking hallway. Approaching, he looked down at the first step, checking for any damage, before slowly bringing his hoof up and stepping onto it. It let out a soft groan at the sudden weight, but overall, it seemed to be stable enough. With a sigh, he gradually made his way up, a quiet, soft clicking becoming audible as he reached the top. Pausing, he looked around the new hallway. Two closed doors lined the left and right walls, with one other door sitting completely open at the other end, opposite to the stairs. The room inside was seemingly pitch black. The soft clicking was emanating from it, though, barely being audible over the wind outside. Cautiously, he moved towards the first door on his right. Trying the knob, he was disappointed to find out it was completely locked up, and quickly turned and moved for the door directly behind himself. He turned the knob, this one notably being unlocked, and pushed it open. Just as it reached halfway, it jolted hard, slamming against something heavy, a loud scraping sound echoing around the hallway. He jumped a little at the sound, before taking a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Very slowly, he leaned inside, finding a totally wrecked bedroom, a turned-over bed partially blocking the doorway. On the opposite wall was a window that peered out into an alleyway, the light from outside barely shining through it. Next to that was a ruined dresser, which sat open, its doors and hinges barely holding on. Inside, torn-up clothes shifted and swayed, slightly dangling out against the floor. With them, a silver necklace could be seen. A gentle smile crossed the unnamed pony's face. He could definitely use that to hold the shard around his neck. After pushing his way past the door and retrieving the necklace, he stepped back out into the hall, quickly wrapping it around his neck. He began slowly making his way further down the hallway, before coming to a stop at the next door on the right, the clicking sound growing slightly more audible as he approached. Yet he could still just barely hear it. Softly, he pushed the door open, revealing what seemed to be a study. Bookshelves lined both walls, a desk sitting between them on the opposite wall to the doorway. Stepping in, he looked around, taking note that while the shelves were mostly empty, there were still books here. Though, they all looked pretty dusty and worn, that he wouldn't doubt even brushing up against them would turn them to dust. That is, all except one, that lay flat against the desk, its cover a deep violet